Stella Sora. Now, this is a closed beta test. I want to get that out the way. This is a first impressions as well. The game is well optimized. It launches very quickly. Here's a live 2D of one of, if not currently, my favorite character, at least in terms of gameplay. I'm going to get into that later on because there are some issues I feel like are important to mention. And if you're wondering, the friends list functions similar to Nikke and a lot of other gacha games, as in, hey, you send stamina, you get stamina. As you see here are a couple of my friends, other beta testers. Personally, I think overall this has been a pretty fine experience. I think this game has potential. There are a few issues. The fan service, as you can see here, is quite nice. The live 2Ds are quite nice. I would like to first and foremost mention about these, they're not interactable. You are not head padding these individuals. I don't know who thought it was okay to launch this in its current state with this, or maybe not include this at all if it's permanent, but they need to be fired immediately. Why can't I head pad the individuals? These look like such perfect poses for it, but no. It's only just disappointment here. The music itself, I won't speak too heavily on. As of right now, it's mid. It may get better. I hope it gets better. The characters themselves, if you're looking through these designs and you're noticing there aren't a lot of flat characters, unfortunately, there seems to be a pretty big lack of them at the moment. Don't get me wrong, they're cute, but they are not on par with Blue Archive in my opinion, and in the exact same fashion, there is no tan, no chocolate. You aren't getting that here. There is no Iori. I think the gameplay has a couple issues. I think the story itself is very reminiscent of Blue Archive's first chapter in a couple ways. Don't get me wrong, I'm fine with games being similar in story types. I just think that given how similar the games look already, it's a bit much. But hey, that doesn't matter if the game is good, if the characters are good, if the music is good, if everything else holds up really well. I think a lot of individuals can admit Blue Archive has bad gameplay, but hey, everything else about the game is pretty fine. Now, the beta test ends on June 8th, so I will be giving my final thoughts then and there. With this being said, if you're concerned about the PC itself or Android client, both of them run really well. In terms of launch speed, I'd say this launches similar to Girls Frontline 2 if you've played that before. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about some common misconceptions. First and foremost, this in my opinion is not Blue Archive with gameplay. I think the gameplay differs so much. The only similarities these two games have, in my opinion, is the live 2Ds and the general style of the game. The gameplay itself, vastly different. It's closer to a roguelike on that front. So with all that out of the way, I think it's important to mention this game is different from Blue Archive, and I think the gacha aspect itself is kind of your biggest hit point for that. It is closest to a Hoyo gacha, unfortunately. 160 is your guarantee counter. This is not a 50-50 banner, it is a 60-40 banner. 60% chance to get the rate up, 40% chance to lose. But if you lose, it doesn't guarantee the next one being that character. You are only guaranteed at the 160 mark. These are the rates if you're interested. You also have a weapon banner. So you know how that is. It's 75-25, similar to every other Hoyo gacha. This is not Hoyoverse, however, so please keep that in mind. And in terms of how both of these function, your weapons, or your discs in this case, are team-wide buffs. These are added to standard banner once their banner initially ends. Characters, however, are not immediately added to standard, and I can't give you a guarantee or a time frame for when that happens, so I don't want to make any final judgments on that. You will have a beginner banner, you do have a standard banner. In terms of characters themselves, they're called trekkers here. It's important to mention, let's go to the limited one as an example. There are talents. These talents are not similar to the ones in Hoyoverse games because your skills are what you level up, your talents require duplicate versions of the character. And yes, within the menu themselves, it says you can get these from events, but I have no way of telling you how much you get per event and how frequent those events are. You either get them from events or pulling duplicates of characters. Contrary to Elephs and Blue Archive, you don't get these from pulling in general and can convert them. You only get them from pulling dupes of that character. And one dupe maxes out all of these, what maxes out and eventually gains you that talent effect. How impactful are these? I don't know. How impactful are signature weapons? I don't know. But what you're going to notice on this menu here is that you have class archetypes. You have range and melee, yes, but you also have vanguards, versatile, and then support characters. This is not a game that I think benefited from having this title. Don't get me wrong, supports are useful, and knowing that they are supportive oriented is quite beneficial. However, because the gameplay of certain characters varies so differently, you can prefer a support character. Cosette here is the character I prefer to main, and I think it's important to mention that because Ascension is your roguelike mode. It's either mono or duo elemental. When you go through Ascension, and let's say in this instance we're comparing it to Honkai Star Rail's Simulated Universe, you get buffs which are recorded as a record. you have one on-field character and then two off-field characters. Whatever buffs you get for this team orientation stick in every other game mode. However, what that means is, if we're going to the other game modes here, and that's as an example, say I'm going to run a farm, I'm going to do a farming run on bounty trials for skill mats. If I go to difficulty 2, I am selecting a previous record, i.e. a previous run of the roguelike mode, and I cannot change character orientations. I cannot swap characters in or out. I am stuck with the team I had in the roguelike. And so hypothetically, let's say you want to use Mystique as your on-fielder, contrary to me, you need to redo the roguelike with Mystique as your main character to get buffs that synergize with her being on field. This is because characters have different buffs depending on whether they are the on-field character or the off-field character. And so these can't be swapped around. And that really sucks because unfortunately, you can dislike the way a character feels as an on-fielder, as your main DPS. They can be clunky, they can be slow, they cannot have enough range for you. They can be very contrary to the playstyle you want. If you want fast-paced playstyles, you don't want a character who's super slow. Frisia here is slow in my opinion. She feels clunky. Cosette is a fast-paced character. She plays like 21 from Punishing Grey Raven. I like that gameplay style, but she's a support. And if you're noticing through the character menu here, you don't see anything about build. You can see potentials, i.e. these are the buffs they can get within the roguelike. However, going through these, some of them are support oriented. As an example, hey, you get a buff. What does this mean? Your survivability can be dependent on you having a particular buff for a character. As an example, Anne here has some really nice potentials. If I'm going through her as a support character, this increases the barrier she gives you, but this also gives you a shield, meaning that my team's survivability can also depend on whether or not I get active buffs. I'm not, saying this is a bad decision. I'm saying it's a questionable one at best. Now, Ascensions do require or recommend 1 to 2 elements, Aqua and Ventus, Umbra and Ignis, Lux. And as a result, your runs and your teams will be mono or duo elemental. Because even if you're going through an auto deploy system like this, the game's going to set you up with an auto team that fits those requirements, mono elemental and Umbra, as an example. The chibis themselves, very cute. The art style, very cute. But I do think the roguelike can be a bit much for some individuals. Now, if I'm clicking the next option, you have discs. These are where weapons come into play. Weapons are generalist buff. This is a very low rarity weapon. It's a 3-star, but it gives everybody Umbra damage. These discs do come with their own music, if you're interested in that. But obviously, depending on the team, some of these may not be useful. Ignis damage isn't useful in any capacity because there aren't Ignis characters in this team. And so you're going to be funneled into a mono or duo elemental team focus because, as an example, if we're going to the current banner, Frisia is Aqua. So I want a team that benefits Aqua, which means it would be an Aqua and Ventus team based on the Ascension run. Because if I'm going into any other variety of content, Bounty, or even Menace Arena, which is your infinite battle tower mode and does have multiple other modes afterwards, the specific modes want or benefit certain elements. But when you're going here and you're going to challenge it, you're still picking out a record. So you still need to have run that specific roguelike version for that specific type of buff or that specific type of content. And I think it's important to mention that. With that out the way, let's talk about your daily loop. You have your throne. Throne is going to be your overarching story development, your commissions, and then pre-support is basically, hey, here's what you should be doing by this point. It's your ascension quests. Think of it like that. Your dailies are pretty simple. Log into the game, do a heart link, send a gift, complete one battle in any one of these orientations. It's on par with, I'd say, GFO2 or even Blue Archives dailies. In terms of launching speed, it's as fast as GFO2. It launches instantaneously. On my phone, it runs perfectly, and on PC, it runs amazing. But let's get back into the gameplay. One issue I think is important to mention is, let's say hypothetically, I want to run difficulty 3. And as a result, I need to run a Umbra or a Ignis team. And I got a brand new character. Let's say hypothetically, I know this isn't going to benefit anyone and benefit this orientation, but let's say I got Noya. I need to take out a character, let's say I'm taking out Mystique, and I'm going to add in Noya. And I want to try her gameplay. Well, I need to make sure she's the on-fielder so I can see how she feels. Then I need to select the buffs. Then I need to go into the roguelike mode, and that is where I can test her. This is her attack range. This is her skill, i.e. her skill. Q is the skill of a support character. E is the skill of the other support character. Assist is auto, but auto isn't really automatic because as you see here, it's not moving. I have to still move. I still have to rely on my ability to understand what's going on and react accordingly. And that can be very difficult in later stages when a lot of things are happening. Now, Noya's not getting a buff, she's not dealing proper damage, it doesn't matter. But this is just to show you, these are kind of iffy. And the buffs benefit certain characters. This benefits Noya, but this only benefits her when she's on field. And that's kind of the issue I have. Now, we're going to leave. As you see here, I'm in stage 1-1. 3-9 is the last stage. And I think these runs obviously can depend on the buffs you have. Sometimes you can get a really strong run. Sometimes you can get a really bad one. And if you don't get the buffs you want, you're gonna hate it. Just as a point of reference, this is what battles look like at higher levels of the respective tower. And so I want you to understand, even though there is a dodge mechanic in this game, good luck using it. Depending on the enemy you're facing, even if it's a boss, it just turns into a bullet hell. And as a result, you're dependent on having those shields or survivability. And, you know, now in the tower respectively, you do have healers and you will get additional buffs that do regenerate your HP or at least reduce damage, but these are tower specific. And so once again, in this specific rotation, I don't have a dedicated shielder. I get one shield from these music notes and that's it. And I'm at 2-10. I still have to get to 3-9. And as you can see here, my team is really good for AoE content, but for boss content, not so much. Now, in the event that you are concerned about it, when a character uses their respective ults, they are immune to damage. The downside, of course, is that you are not immune while using your skill, even if your skill locks you into an animation. And this is still time-based. The quicker you clear the content, the better rewards you get. And so I think the roguelike mode is fun as a roguelike, but as a primary game mode, not so much. And I want to preface this by saying, because this is me post-recording the rest of this video, for as much as I am complaining about the roguelike mode, there is a sweep function for this. So we'll get into that post this run. It is also important to mention that within these respective Ascension domains, your experience will vary, at least in my opinion, depending on the number of characters you have. This is because, since the Ascension main specifically benefit Ignis or Umbra, and Ventus and Aqua units, as well as Lux, you may in turn have a better or worse experience depending on the elements of units that you actively like and choose to use. Because if you don't have the supportive unit for that particular element, good luck having a fun or in any way consistent run of that domain. And with so many buffs being oriented towards RNG or RNG Reliance, you don't have the consistency to guarantee you're going to survive the run or deal as much damage as you can. It's like if the entirety of HSR was based around the concept of you doing good in Simulated Universe. Except instead of it being like that, they instead built an entire game around that. And it doesn't make for a fun experience because you can only mitigate so much RNG within the context of a roguelike. Integrated Strategies or IS5 as an example in Arknights has certain guarantees for, as an example, picking up certain trinkets or certain artifacts. But that's only to a small degree. And yes, while those could be incredibly powerful, they don't in turn immediately win or lose you the entire run. You can still mess up. And Arknight is inherently a team game. This is down to 3 characters. Now, the top bar indicates a stun meter, so you can stun enemies. And certain buffs will want you to stun enemies. This is kind of the downside of using a melee character. You're in a position to where certain enemies can just say, how about no? And as you see, I completed this run with barely any HP left. And so this was a difficulty 3 run. For reference on the time it takes, this was the team I utilized, and it took me 698 seconds. I really don't understand why we're not abbreviating that down to minutes, but whatever. We'll save this record because it is, technically speaking, our most recent and potentially strongest record, but as you see here, you can't quick battle it. And so how does quick battling work? Well, when you do this monolith, you do get weekly points, and you do get specific currency for that weekly amount. And so what you do is you go over to here, and you unlock the monolith sweep function. Now these are buffs, and these are sort of the major ones. Enhancement rooms, and then refreshing. And so you do get active buffs with your last buff being, hey, you can shop restock. But then of course the question is, how does sweep function work? Well, you get sweep tickets, you use it, and let's say hypothetically I want to go for a brand new squad. Let's say I want to get a Ventus and Aqua team. First off, you need to have cleared it first, so you still need to spend the time clearing it, but this is just an example. So we're gonna go with this domain. We're gonna run it with Mystique as the DPS. Actually, no, let's do the exact same one with Cosette. Running this exact same team, start battle, we're going here. And so you have a bit more customization, yes. And so it removes some of the tedium, at least from a secondary and third run, but you are still having to go through this, picking out your buffs, which I do enjoy. It gives you some degree of control. And so for those of you interested in the game, but maybe a bit leery about the respective roguelike mode, I don't know if this is improving your opinion. And so that is the sweep function. Is it good? I don't think it's going to benefit you if you're running a team for the sole purpose of getting their initial buffs. I think you have, having already happened to at least clear this tower particularly yourself, it's fine. Does it fix my initial issues? No. But I just wanted to update you on that one. But that's the nature of a roguelike. I just think making a roguelike a required game mode is a bad decision. People like roguelikes. If you look at Archetypes, Integrated Strategies is a great game mode because it's optional. If you do it, you get resources, but you don't have to do it. Having a roguelike be associated with the core of your game and having those buffs dramatically change your experience with certain characters can be pretty bad. Because as an example, if you pulled Frisia on the banner and you're like, I love her design, I really want to play her and make her into an on-field character, well, you need to build a team. Easy. You need to level her up. Easy peasy. Build up her skills. Easy. But then you need to do the roguelike and hope you get buffs that synergize well with her damage type, her being on field, and what you intend to play her with and as. Do you want to do ult spam? Do you want to do skill support spam? Do you want to do auto attack spam? And so on. And that means you can get a great character. You can get Mystique. I think Mystique is a perfectly fine character. But if you don't like that character's gameplay, your opinion of her can be dramatically altered by the buffs you get from the roguelike mode. And that sucks. I think there is a great core gameplay loop, and I'm going to just go through here on essentially my actual team, and I'm going to show you the roguelike mode. I'm going to auto deploy discs. As you see here, the discs don't benefit anybody because no one's Ignis. Oh my god, increase Ignis character's attack? Yeah, for the no one on this team. So you do want to keep in mind that some of these aren't beneficial to you. As an example, I need to slide this out, and I need to slide this out because, to clarify, the melody skill is what you gain from equipping this. The harmony skill is what you gain based off buffs in the roguelike. You are still not fully getting the benefit of this unless you get the beneficial buffs. So let's take out this. And let's slide in something generalist in my opinion. Any of these lower rarity ones. Okay, main character's attack by 30%. Okay, main character's skill down by 52%. Perfectly fine. And this is going to be your general loop. If you're concerned about, hey, what does the weapon do? What does the weapon banner do? I actively can't tell you. But let's take a look at the gacha animation. Because it's not bad in my opinion. There are only 2 rarities, realistically speaking. That's your 5 stars and that's your 4 stars. You're not going to get anything below that. This is what the gacha animation itself looks like. Gold is a 4 star. You will get weapons on occasion. You can't inspect them to see what they do, so please keep that in mind. But overall, I think it's a fine animation. I don't think it's amazing. I like the art style of the music itself. But also do keep in mind that discs, oh, Teresa, I actually use her quite a lot. She's very cute. But since we just got a dupe of her, let's go over to here. And as you see here, I have skill 1. This is talent 2. So what are you doing? You're going through here with the dupes of characters. I got 1 copy of Teresa. That's 60 copies here, 60 pieces. And I'm unlocking all of these individually. There are small, minor buffs, which, when activated, unlock this major one. And so that's important to note. In reference to these other game modes, if you're intrigued, Bounty Hunt is, hey, here's one big boss, fight them. Catalysm Survivor is, hey, there's a bunch of enemies, fight them. You will get buffs in these too. Once again, everything is roguelike oriented in my opinion. That's not a good thing because the fun of a roguelike is kind of diminished when everything is RNG. But that's my grievances on gameplay. I understand I went on a tangent. I understand it may get better. But I feel like it's very important to mention. This is a first impressions. I'm not going to give a final thought on this until the beta is over on June 8th. But this is something that honestly to me was disappointing because yes, it's Blue Archive with gameplay, but my gameplay is dictated by, did I get the right buffs? Did I get the right side buffs, melodies? Did I build a proper team? Oh no, did I get a new character? I need to redo it again? Oh wait, this character's gameplay is bad? Oh, well, gotta redo it again with someone else, which never feels good. In relation to your hard links, I will say hard links are not nearly as good as they are in Blue Archive for Momo Talks. Heart links do not lead into bond stories. Bond stories are in a separate menu. You have heart links, which have minimal responses. It mainly auto carries. I'm not clicking anything. The game is just doing it itself. You then have your invites, which you invite certain characters if we're going into Cosette. Or actually, let's go into Teresa. It gives you that little warning. Here's a special memory. This is how these play out. I am not clicking anything. Once again, this is auto. And don't get me wrong, not bad. It gives you some bond and you can skip the entirety of it. So if we skip it, boom, done. And I can leave. I've increased my trust rank with her. And if I'm going to mail, I can send her a gift. And this is a very simplistic menu, but you can only send 10 a day. Not to 10 individual students, but 10 gifts in total. Fun times. You've seen the live 2Ds of this game. You can have 5 equipped on a menu. You can also have discs if you get a limited disc. I don't have any limited or 5-star discs, so I'm missing out on that. Bond stories, since some of you may be intrigued in that, because I know you might love the character and not care about anything else, and that is perfectly fine because I am the same way. You get a bunch of archive intro, you have a bunch of different voice lines. These voice lines are all subtitled pretty well in my opinion, and you have minimal Bond stories, 1 to 2, maybe. Sometimes you might get a little bit more, sometimes you might get 3. But honestly speaking, they're not that long, or there aren't that many. They are longer than Blue Archives, but the length of them doesn't inherently make them a good Bond story, so it kind of depends on your preference for that one. I'm not going to go through all of them individually because that would be way too long, but it's important to mention. Skills do have a simplistic version. Hey, this is what it does. I think the simplistic version doesn't really give you a good idea of what they do in total. Applies a shield to the main character. Well, how much is that shield? What is it based off of? Etc, etc. With all of that being said, it is 150 gems for a pull. You get 60 gems per daily you do. Essentially, once you complete all your dailies, that's 60 gems. If you go in the mindset of getting a Welkin or a monthly equivalent, you might get enough for a full pull per day. I don't know how they're going to do that because we don't have access to a paid shop yet. I don't know if they're doing skins either. To talk about the aspect of potential skins, characters come with 2 modes. You have your base model, and then once you ascend them enough, you get access to this, which is their amplified or awakened variant. Think of it like an Arknight's E2 skin. These are very cute. These are very pretty. Cosette here, she has hers. I think they stepped the art up a lot. I think this is fine, but this is way cuter. I think the characters, from what I've seen within the story itself, and story is separate from gameplay. You don't have to engage with the gameplay at all, but I think it's important to mention both. Story is pretty fine. I will say nothing standing out to me. The game tries initially to do a 3D with a visual novel on the side, similar to what Zenless Zone Zero does, but it gives up on that post that introduction. So don't expect more from that. It's not fully voiced. Bond stories, not fully voiced either. Bond stories aren't skippable. You can fast forward through them, but you still have to click here and there, which is unfortunate if you're someone who just wants the LGD or just wants the gems from them. But hey, they're not god awful and there aren't many of them. Friends list, you send each other stamina. That's literally what your friends list is for. Commissions, you send individual characters out to collect things for you. You can auto this, leave it. They give you skill mats here and there. They give you ascension mats. You don't have to pay too much attention to it in my opinion. It's fine. This is your main story. This is your event story. A lot of it's very simplistic features. Characters have traits, your element, your type, i.e. support, versatile, vanguard, and then steady and the squad they're assigned to. What this means is the squad is here, and this is a personality: inquisitive, creative, collector, adventurous. Does this mean anything? Well, it actually applies to your commissions because adventurous characters are needed for certain commissions, collectors are needed for others. That's it. 240 resin at a recharge rate of 6 minutes per resin regeneration. Make of that what you will. In my honest opinion, at least for my first impressions, because that's kind of where this sort of tutorial introduction ends. There are a lot of things that I'd say are pretty fine and nice about this game. I think the art style is great. The music, bad, but the music it's closed beta. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I think this is doing too much in too many different ways. It's not Blue Archive enough for me to say, yeah, if you like beta, you'll love this game, because the character designs, while cute, don't match Blue Archive in a lot of ways. You don't have the flatter characters. You don't have the smaller chested characters. You don't have the tan characters like Iori. The fan service, while nice with the on-banner character because you got that brief panty shot, that's it. That's like it. You don't get much. That's fine. The gameplay is the biggest downside to me because Blue Archive at least has the benefit of a gameplay loop that is quick to do. And I think this has that potential so long as you never want to change your on-field character, and then so long as you orient your squad to having one record that's really good per element and you never want to pull. And you're only pulling for bond search. At that point, great, pull, play the game. But if you're looking for something with more complex gameplay, I think there is some room for strategy, yes, but that's reliant on you getting the things you want out of a roguelike mode to optimize the gameplay to be what you prefer. There is not a lot of consistency. This isn't Arknights in my opinion. This isn't going to be a system to where I think the roguelike mode overtakes the value that potentials or dupes of characters may have. I think having a smaller roster, at least giving us access to a smaller roster right now, and then having what's limited to, if we're going to the menu here, essentially 2 rarities of characters, 4-star and 5-star, or 3-star and 4 stars, if we're being honest here, severely limits the amount you can pump out. And one of the reasons people like Blue Archive is because of the variety of characters. You're bound to find someone you love. That's the same thing Arknights has access to. And not having access to either one of those, and not having the fan service that a lot of people would expect, and not having an actual gear system sucks. My first impression would be this is a solid 6 out of 10 that can be brought down the more you have to do the roguelike mode. If you only do it once, stick with that team and ignore a lot of other pieces of content here and there, great. If the endgame itself is actually difficult, good. But if the endgame itself is trivialized by having proper buffs within the context of the roguelike, bad. There's so many ways this can, in my opinion, backfire that I can't look forward to this on the level that I wish I could have. This is a fun experience. But I think copying the gacha system from a Hoyoverse game, and let's be honest here, that's kind of what it is. It's not Arknights within how they handle their gacha system. It's not Blue Archive. We're gonna take the Hoyoverse percentages from the weapon banner, the weapon banner concept itself, which is god awful, and make it into our own. And that's fine. If the game itself is good, if the release order of characters doesn't mean you're constantly having to pull a brand new one, and if the story and bond stories keep up good quality. I think the characters themselves and what they offer now are fun. Ignoring the gameplay, this is a fun game. This is a great experience. I actually like this a lot. The fact that it launches so quickly is wonderful. But I feel like it was important to really go in on the gameplay because for me, that was the biggest drawback. I love roguelikes. I love integrated strategies. But I like them when they're optional, not when I have to do them. And not when there is no way to test out a character's gameplay. There needs to be a training room section right here below the character so I can see what they feel like on field, because having to enter the roguelike to test out if the character themselves is fun to play is a god-awful experience. With that being said, subscribe. I'll see you next time, and I'll likely see you on June 8th when the beta ends and I can finally give my final thoughts.